tax collector in 50 years. As noted, we are recording this. If anyone objects, please say so now. But we will be recording it and putting it into our YouTube channel for the general information of the public. So Mr. Roberts was elected a year ago, is that right? So, and has brought some changes to the tax collection office. Prior to that election, it was an appointed office in county government. The changes that came about as a result of Amendment 10 created elected officials and, in fact, changed the status of some of the existing elected officials so that the sheriff, elections, clerk of the court, and tax collector, they are all independent offices now headed by their respective elected officials, as opposed to being elected or appointed department heads under the county government and sharing a common administrative structure. So by way of introduction, Mr. Roberts has served as the Volusia County tax collector for a year. He feels directly accountable to the citizens in Volusia County and is dedicated to managing state resources while respecting the public's local needs. Prior to his election, Will worked for more than 7 years as a tax supervisor in the Volusia County Revenue Division, where he oversaw $680 million in property tax collections. His experience with tax collection and his education have instilled in Will a dedication to providing excellent customer service, ensuring accurate transactions, and educating citizens. Before moving to Volusia County, Will spent 7 years serving in the United States Air Force at multiple duty stations domestically and abroad. This experience laid the groundwork for a career in public service. Will worked his way through college, earning a master's degree in public administration, a bachelor's degree in business, and an associate's degree in business from Daytona State. He also has earned the designation of Certified Florida Collector, which recognizes his knowledge and experience with the collection of taxes. So tonight, he'll acquaint us with what will be new and improved with this new structure in county tax collection. I will ask everyone, except Mr. Roberts, we're going to have PowerPoint. So if we can preserve bandwidth by shutting down our video feeds, that would be great. So thank you, Will. Take it away.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for having me. And I will go ahead and share my screen now. And you should see my PowerPoint presentation where it talks about Will Roberts, tax collector, and I am serving to make a difference. That is a part of what I'm here for. I've had more than 21 years of public service, so it's definitely part of who I am. I serve to make a difference in our daily world. So our vision for our office is that we are changing the way Volusia residents experience government service. I know, for instance, there's a low expectation of government service. But for instance, I was in the Orange City driver's license office last week, and there was a lady in there that brought her laptop so she could do work while she was in there. And that's, to have that expectation is just, that is unacceptable. So we are working on changing that and making it better for our citizens, residents, and taxpayers. So here's an overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to go a little bit about the tax collector role, the changes due to Amendment 10, the impact on services of Amendment 10, the impact of costs due to Amendment 10, and then we're going to talk about the office's proposed budget. So many of you probably already know a lot of this information, but just to reiterate, so for property tax, we are a collection for the county in the fact that we collect property tax. Now, what the process starts with is local governments and taxing authorities going through their budget hearings, and that process is actually almost wrapping up. It's wrapping up tonight for the county. So a lot of the cities and the taxing authorities are getting that wrapped up within the next week or so. And what they're doing is they're establishing the tax rate and the non-ad valorem tax rate, and then they give all that information over to the property appraiser. And then the property appraiser uses their values and assessments and exemptions, and they make all those things together, and then they give the evaluations to us and how much we should be expecting to charge. And then we bill it, collect it, and then distribute it back to the taxing and levying authorities. So we're more than just property taxes, but we serve as an agent for the county to collect those property taxes and tangible taxes and then distribute them back to the taxing authorities. But we also serve as an agent of the state of Florida, and we provide motor vehicle services and more. And one thing you have to know is that we do not change anything. There are no policy changes with having an elected tax collector because the state provides that direction. We do not. As an agent for the state, we don't change any of the policies. The state sets that for us. So before Amendment 10, according to our charter, we had an appointed tax collector. So the county served as the tax collector. They set up the Volusia County Revenue Division as a part of the charter. There was a paragraph in the charter that abolished the elected tax collector position. And the Volusia County Revenue Division, serving as the tax collector, collected property and tangible taxes, tag and title services, did disabled parking permits, the hunting and fishing licenses, forced development tax, business tax receipts, and was the miscellaneous collection agent for the county. And just to note that all this revenue that was generated through this office was funded to the general fund, and all the collection that they did went to the general fund. So now, as the first elected tax collector in 50 years, we still do a lot of the same services: property and tangible taxes, tag and title, disabled parking permits. We still have hunting and fishing licenses, but some of the new services we're able to offer as an elected tax collector to be an agent of the state. So driver's license services, we're being an agent for the Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. Birth certificates, we're being an agent for the Florida Department of Health. And then concealed weapons licenses, we're being a state agent for the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So what we no longer do is tourist development taxes and business tax receipts, and we are no longer the miscellaneous collection agent for the county. And what all this does is it remains in the general fund and is elected. It still goes back to the general fund, but it's also funded. That part is funded by the general fund. So the collection of that is funded by the general fund. So an elected tax collector could be considered better by the public because we are actually responsible and accountable to the public versus just a county employee. So part of our priorities for the tax collector's office is that we want to provide the best customer service. And to do that, we need to increase staff. And we are increasing staff just by transitioning the driver's license offices. They have approximately 30 employees that we are assuming as we're moving on and taking those offices. We also want to add a Deltona office because that city is the largest in Volusia County with approximately 90,000 residents in the city, and we do not currently have an office there. We're offering concealed weapons licenses. Hopefully that will be coming up soon. And our goal in the end is to create one-stop shopping. So a resident, citizen, or taxpayer can go to one of our offices, get all their needs done in one place: birth certificate, all the things that we just went over: driver's license, birth certificate, concealed weapons license, pay their property tax. And one of the things about driver's license is that it's an unfunded mandate by the state that we take that over. And our goal is always to improve service. And what we're looking at is wait times. We're looking at the different locations. We're looking at the busy days. We're looking at the time of the year. And it's all about having the adequate amount of staff to respond to those needs. So we are now a self-funded office. And what does that mean? It means we really run more like a business. So we generate revenues to cover our operating expenses. We receive a little bit of fees from each transaction that we do. And then whatever we create in revenue above and beyond our operating expense, it goes right back to the county and the county's general fund and the taxing authorities associated with that. And then it just means we operate more like a business. The state sets the fees that are charged by the tax collectors across the state. We have nothing to do with that. We don't change that. The state does. So the fiscal impacts to our office from Amendment 10 is that, first of all, that we're taking over, we're assuming driver's license, and that is a unfunded mandatory assumption of the driver's license offices. And what that initially creates is increased staffing, and we have 2 new locations that we're taking on. So there's overhead associated with that. So if you look at this slide, in the left side, it's talking about fiscal year 21, and it's estimated still because it's not complete, but we are getting close to that completion date, which is September 30th, because we go by fiscal year. So fiscal year 2022 proposed is the column in the middle, and then the column to the right is the difference between those two. Now, if you look at the blue, this year our expenditures are going to be about $5.5 million. Next year is going to be about $10 million. And again, a lot of that has to do with us assuming the driver's license offices, the personnel, and the capital along with that. So, and what that created was a difference of about $4.4 million. Now, in the orange is revenue that's generated for the estimated tax year. So for instance, 21, it's approximately a $12 million revenue. In the next year, in fiscal year 22, it's going to be approximately 19 million, which is an increase in revenue of about 6.1 million. And then the green shows what we're going to transfer back to the county, which is approximately 7.3 million this year. And then next year, we're looking at about 8.9 million, an increase of $1.6 million. And again, we're adding services. So that's one of the reasons that we're going to have increased revenue. But if you're looking at the net revenue this year compared to next year, there is a decrease. And this is due to the unfunded mandatory assumption of driver's license. Obviously, personnel and overhead are your 2 biggest things in a budget, no matter what. Now, if you're looking at this, this is a comparison with other counties. What the blue represents is the operating expenses of each of the tax collector offices in the counties surrounding us. And then the green is what they actually give back to the county at the end of the fiscal year. Now, if you look at Brevard, Now, Brevard County is comparable to Volusia because they have the same amount of parcels, almost the same population. They almost have the same amount of revenue. So they're comparable to us in the fact that they're going to be, they have the same type of statistics with their information. So the one thing that we have to mention about Brevard County is that they are operating at 17.9 million this year and only giving 1.4 million back to the county. But the reason is they do have a little capital restructuring that they were doing, and they're adding some buildings. So that was the reason they had the increased capital expenses this year. So if you compare Brevard County to Volusia County, so Volusia County on the left is what we're doing this fiscal year, which we're giving approximately 7.3 million back, and we're only spending about 5.5 million. And then next year, we're anticipating getting approximately 19 million and then giving 9 million back to the county. So here's what we covered today. We covered the tax collector role, the changes due to Amendment 10, and the impact on services due to Amendment 10, and the impact of costs due to Amendment 10. And then we talked a little bit about the office's proposed budget. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into a little bit of trivia regarding the tax collector's office. And if you're interested in participating, you can just type your answer in the chat. So, first one, how many vehicle registrations did the tax collector process in the first 7 months of 2021? And that's January to July. So was it 26,000, 53,000, 147,000, or 233,000? Anybody? All right, looks like we got some responses. Good job. Let's go ahead and move forward. Looks like we're done with that. And if you answered D, 233,173 vehicle registrations within the first 7 months of 2021. All right, the next one. How many property tax bills will the office mail in October? This is the annual mailing. Go ahead and type your answers into the chat. It looks like some people are picking C. Some people are picking D. All right. All right. And the answer is, if you picked D, 299,865, that is actually the correct answer. And if you pick C, you were accurate for last year's mailing. That's how much we have increased over 1 year. We've got approximately 22,000 parcels additional this year that we're billing. So that is an interesting statistic. All right. So of the approximately 52,000 specialty plates issued in Volusia residents as of September 1, what was the most popular seller?
Sea turtles.
All right, you got a couple of responses, A and a D. Yeah, bunch of D's. And actually, that's a very good guess. Up to a year or two ago, that was the most popular license plate in the state of Florida and in Volusia County. But now it is Endless Summer. And number 2 is helping the sea turtles survive. And number 3 is now University of Florida. So yeah, we've had a little bit of a change. University of Florida was popular for the longest time, but now it is Endless Summer and helping sea turtles survive that has gone above. So the last question that we have is, how can you avoid the line if you need to renew your vehicle registration or pay taxes? A, pay online and have it mailed to you, mail it in, pay online and pick it up the same day, or D, all of the above. See a couple answers in there? Oh yeah, D. A lot of people picking D. Looks like everybody's that we have to mail it in. All right. And if you answered D, all of those options are available for renewing your registration or paying taxes. So we do have that availability for all those options. It is a nice and convenient system. So I did see some questions in the chat, and let me go ahead and address those real quick. So where are your current offices? We have 4 locations right now. We have DeLand, Orange City, New Smyrna, and Daytona Beach. And I'm currently in my Daytona Beach office. We are taking over the Orange City driver's license office come October 1. We will be assuming that office, and we do actually have to close down the office to be able to make that change. So we are closing it the 1st, the 4th, and the 5th, and plan to reopen on October 6th. And if you go out to our website, you can find that at bctaxcollector.org/locations. And I do see a question, can't we use this for climate action instead of giving money back? That is a good question, but the legislation would have to change in order for that action to take place, because per Florida statute, that's the reason we give money back to the county at the end of the fiscal year, as long as our operating expenses, or as long as our revenue is greater than our operating expenses. And then I did see, what ways can individuals pay the property taxes? One lump sum only, or monthly, quarterly, etc. So there are multiple ways you can pay. What we're getting ready for now is the annual mailing, and that's the traditional mailing. That's the one that most people get mailed to them, is the November mailing, and you get that once a year, November, and that provides for 4 discounts that you have the ability to get. So in November, it's a 4% discount. If you have an escrow, you should receive an escrow statement, because your escrow company should request that information from us and pay it in the month of November. You can, monitor that yourself by looking up your parcel on bctaxcollector.org/pay, and that you can look up your information that way, and that will help you find out whether they paid it or not. Usually the escrow companies wait until near the end of November and pay it then. So you get a 4% discount in November, 3% in December, 2% in January, 1% in February, and then the full amount is due in March. Now, quarterly option, you can prepay. So one of the things you can get set up for, as of November 1 for the 2022 tax year, if you're interested in paying it quarterly, you can pay it in June, September, which are prepayments, and then the adjustment happens in December and March. So you can pay it in quarterly. Now, there is one more option that's not nearly as popular, but it is available. You can pay your taxes as a partial payment. Now that happens, now there's stipulations that are per Florida statute that you lose your discount. You have to pay $10 per payment, all that stuff. So that starts November 1 through March 31st, and whatever's left over, it can still go delinquent and go through that process. So the way you find out about that is vctaxcollector.org/taxes. Let's see. Okay, I have a question about my salary. And that's a very good question. Actually, it is mandated by Florida Statute 145, and it is a calculation of the population. And there's different parts of that calculation, but my calculation is right now, as along with the other constitutional officers of Volusia County, is set at $159,278. Now I actually, because I'm a certified Florida collector, get a $2,000 stipend that for that certification. So my actual salary is $161,278. And the last question looks like, can you explain how property revenues break out from regular properties as compared to properties that have some kind of nonprofit status? Okay. So what happens there is usually those properties are exempt from they're exempt from ad valorem taxes. So what that means is the big part of your bill, where you see the county and the cities and the multiple other taxing authorities, those nonprofit organizations, as long as they go through the property appraiser and get all their exemptions in place through that office, because they have to go through the property appraiser to make sure that happens, then they are exempt from the ad valorem taxes. They are not exempt from the non-ad valorem taxes. They actually do have to pay that. And that's the same thing that goes for 100% disabled veteran. They actually are exempt from the ad valorem taxes, but they have to pay the non-ad valorem taxes. Right. Then do we have any other questions otherwise?
I do.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
do, Will. Question. I put one in the chat, but I'll just repeat it.
Okay.
You mentioned as a state agent, the state sets those fees. So
Correct.
the driver's license and those things. And those were things you were required to take over, correct?
Correct.
As a state agent. How are the fees set for county services?
So in the realm of property tax, so the fees are set per Florida statute again, and it's a commission based on the collection for the county. So the county is responsible for paying a commission to the tax collector. Now, that's why when you see their budget, they are going to have a line item that says for the tax collector, and that's because they have to account it for it that way per Florida statute. So in the past, when they were operating as the tax collector, they didn't have to show those commissions on their line by line item for their budget. But now that they have to pay me for the commissions for collecting of the property taxes, they have to show that on their budget. So that's an interesting change. It's really not any different than what it was before, but it is in the fact that they have to account for it differently. So they're still getting the same amount of money is coming through the system, but they have to account for it differently.
Okay. And do you get to set the fees for, I don't know, the licensing things or anything like that?
No, I don't. All that is set through the state. So the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, they deal with everything concealed weapons intake. The Florida Department of Health, the birth certificates, those are all done that way. Tag and title, all those are done by the state, Florida Highway and Safety and Motor Vehicle. Same thing with driver's license. And actually, in respect of driver's licenses, the state is probably more than willing to get rid of that responsibility because it is not a revenue generator. Actually, we only get $6.25 for each driver's license we issue. And if one of our clerks spends 1 hour with a person trying to get them a new driver's license or whatever the case may be, then obviously that $6.25 is not going to cover the cost, overhead, employee pay, all that stuff of getting that, 1 hour of work done. So
now you've got me curious, because now I'm going to ask, is there a process whereby you get to say, here's what it costs me on average to process these, and this fee doesn't cover it?
Right. And that's one of the interesting things too. The tax collectors have been trying to work with the state and have been requesting for quite some time a little bit of a fee increase, because they're obviously not, the fees that are being collected are not covering our expenses. So, the other tax collectors around the state have been working on that for quite some time. It hasn't happened, but if there gets to be a public push for that, I'm sure things will change regarding that.
Does it sound too much like a tax increase?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. That's probably why a lot of the fees haven't increased, because actually there is a new process for the fee increase. If you go through legislation to change the fee, there is a new process that has to, it's an additional process that has to happen. So I'm sure it's just cumbersome, and people are like, no, we don't want to increase fees because we don't want, again, more tax.
Okay.
We just got another question in the chat. It says, are there any tax watchdog groups in this county or region? Are you actively monitored by the statewide tax organization? And what are the major criticisms of Florida's county tax collection system? Okay, the first question, I'm not sure about the tax watchdog groups in this county. I'm sure there are some. I'm just not completely familiar with them. And then, are you actively monitored by the statewide tax organization? So we are regulated by the Florida Department of Revenue. Actually, our budget goes through them for approval, and we give that information to the Florida Department of Revenue for approval, and then they give that information back to us and say whether it's approved or not, or if anything needs to be tweaked. And then, of course, we give that information to the county and the county council so that they know what they're to expect in the form of revenue back above and beyond our operating expenses. We do have an, talking about actively monitored, we are part of the auditing process. So the 5 constitutional officers and the county council and the county of Volusia itself is audited on a yearly basis. And we actually just recently went through that process. We went through the request for proposal process and chose James Moore as our auditor for the next 5 years, and they have an opportunity for a one-time renewal for another 5 years. So for the next 10 years, we've got our auditing system and auditing vendor sorted out. So
great group. They're a great company and local.
Correct. Yes, and they've been doing a great job for Volusia County, and I think we'll continue to see that in the future. What are the major criticisms of Florida's county tax collection system? I mean, that's a good question. I don't know that there's any major criticisms of the Florida County tax collecting system. We are a part of the Florida Tax Collectors Association, and we obviously, that's a great group of tax collectors throughout the state that we can bounce things off with. So we try to work. We're not trying to recreate the wheel. When we were developing, a brand new corporation, basically, started as of January 5th, 2021. We were working with other tax collectors throughout the state that had already been doing some of the same things that we're taking on right now. So we didn't make great changes to the way the wheel has worked. We just looked at other tax collectors and went off them. So yeah, very good question. Thank you.
Will, do you see, you're very service oriented. Do you see service demands? You had the slide showing all the different ways that you could pay things and go online. Right. Do you see demand shifting in that direction so that in the future there will just be more and more movement to an online system?
Right, and we honestly have, and COVID brought that up. COVID actually, I think, thrust people into the let's see what online can do, because a lot of business out there have seen more and more customers do their business online. So it was no different than for government services. So for instance, for the 2020 tax year, 14% of our taxpayers actually pay their property taxes online. And then approximately 23% of the vehicle registration renewals in Volusia County are now done online. So yes, there is a migration to online services. We are still seeing a lot of our offices filled with people, because sometimes there are things that have to be done in office. But we only anticipate that we'll probably continue to get people in our offices. As as we mentioned, there's 22,000 more property tax bills than we had last year. So what this indicates is that we're only going to increase because our population keeps increasing. And to meet that demand, we continually encourage people to do what they can online. In fact, we actually recently redesigned our vehicle registration renewals to focus on online. But we're doing what we can as far as online is concerned and trying to make it as easy and convenient as possible.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. So I will just thank you for a really, really good program, very informative. Brought us up to speed in terms of your office and what we can expect.
I did see another
services.
Question popping up.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it says, how do you collect property taxes from